Hello, everyone. I have with me today Mar Parrilla, the founder, artistic director of Danza Organica, Boston-based, a company radically dedicated towards dancing towards a liberated future. And we'll get into that. But the company does amazing work. We'll talk all about it. But thank you so much, Mar, for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's exciting to be in this space with you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you again. Um, yeah, so the company is radically dancing towards a liberated future. What does that liberated future look like to you? What does dancing towards it look and feel like? And how does the company specifically do that? Just to kind of get a little more into that, the meat of that beautiful statement.
Yeah, thank you. So, as a company, our mission has always been to speak on social justice issues, particularly those that impact us as BIPOC people. And I think that we've gone through a couple of years that have really shown, even magnified, the issues that this country has, particularly as it pertains with colonialism and all of that. And we have seen ourselves represented in the media, particularly in a lot of pain, the face of oppression, and all of that. And we are shifting to thinking about ourselves in a future where we're already liberated, where we are free of that oppression. And so our social justice mission is now geared towards how does that look like for us, which is a really difficult question. For example, I am Boricua, I'm Puerto Rican. So we've been a colony for over 500 years and we've never been independent. So it is hard for someone who has never been, that has always been colonized, to think of yourself in a way other than. And so, but it is a necessity to think about yourself in a liberated way in order to get there. And so we are utilizing dance and movement and giving ourselves the opportunity to go through those spaces that are difficult and complicated and hard to imagine, but to actually imagine them and find ways to put them in our bodies, find ways to put them out there so that we can start moving in that direction. Because if we don't imagine it, how are we going to get there? And that's why this year also our We Create Festival is focused on embodying liberation. And so the artists were also asked that question. How do you see yourself as a BIPOC artist in your community? How do you see your community or yourself in a liberated space?
That is beautiful. Yeah, this truth of, if you don't know it is conceivable, how can you reach it? How can you work towards it? How can you fight for it? I think is really important and beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in that very sort of direct messaging, which is beautiful and important, I'm wondering what the public reception has been. Has there been pushback? People appreciate it? You're in Boston, which is, we think of very progressive, but, in certain ways that's contestable. Like maybe not so much in certain ways. But yeah, I wonder how the public at large has been in conversation with that very overt message and that work.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good question. And I think a lot about our trajectory as a company in Boston. And so I founded Danza Organica in 2007 in New York. And then I moved to Boston, and was really when I devoted time to really delve into the company in 2008. And back when I moved here in 2008, Boston looked completely different. There were really
I've lived in both places. Yep.
Yes. So there were like very few spaces that were like open, receptive, and interested in people of color. And so that's why shortly after I started We Create, but I also decided that I needed to devote all my energies to filling in that gap that at the time was so huge for me, the way I perceived it and the way that I navigated spaces and felt ostracized or so on and so forth. And I think that at the time when I had conversations, for example, We Create started as a space to highlight women of color. That was the first one. And then I think I did receive a little bit of pushback after that, in terms of like, I think someone asked, doesn't that mean that you're excluding the other? And then at the time, I don't think I had the tools or the support to think, well, those others have been supported for so long, women of color need a space. But I was like new to Boston and so many things were fresh, and I was just building that confidence for myself as well. And even though I love opening the festival for everybody, um, women of all kinds, and now we're opening to gender nonconforming artists. We always have kept the social justice mission to the festival, and this year we focused on BIPOC artists, which for me also brought back that initial mission, and particularly also because it creates a space where we can talk about things that impact us, and in a vulnerable space and a safe place as well. But at the beginning, back to your question, I think that was frowned upon a little bit in 2008. And then I focused on doing more of that BIPOC focused work through my company, but not through the festival. So there's definitely been a shift in the community, in the United States. There has been a shift on how we look at, how we are actually looking at race issues. We're looking at the face of colonialism. And I think that has made me feel a little bit better in terms of I'm not alone in this fight as a director, as one of the few women of color directing arts organizations in Boston, so it's, I wear a lot of hats, and I also have had to find ways of just pushing through and represent and unapologetically, so it's definitely been a process. There has been pushback, and I've had to just deal with it and move forward.
It's like, it's who I am. You have to come to art as who you are, because it never ends up great if you don't.
Exactly.
I think it's important. Yeah, and these are sticky issues of like, well, who speaks and how do they speak to these issues, coming from their social positioning. And all of these questions are swirling around in this country right now and in the world. And I think art can be a space where we investigate and we discuss and we come together. With all the COVID constraints that we're now dealing with, which makes things tough. Yeah, because art doesn't always have an answer. Like, these questions don't necessarily have a nice pat and dry answer. And that's what art can do. It can open up the questions that can be more important sometimes than the answers, which can be frustrating for people who want an answer.
Yes.
But,
and that's the other thing. I'm gonna put my headphones as I speak to you. That's the other thing, that I have always believed that the process is much more important than the product when it comes to art making. And so in this whole wave that we're riding with imagining liberation, the process is what matters the most. How do we get there? What are the conversations? How do we embody those ideas? Yeah, I'm gonna pause to put this on as you frame the next question.
Take your time. Yeah, and the process is where that imagining happens. Where that magic of creation people together in a space and something that you didn't know was there or could be there emerges. And that's the magic.
Exactly, exactly.
Mm.
And you never know what you're going to discover in the process, which is why, like if I say, this is why I want the piece to look like, this is how we need to imagine ourselves in the future without having gone through the process of delving into all the layers of conditioning, pre-existing trauma, on all of those things, so that we can actually not objectively, the opposite, subjectively and also consciously, intentionally create that ground for future generations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I'm curious also about that experience in the creative process of working together with other BIPOC dancers, as you mentioned, and being together in that shared struggle and that experience, being together with white dancers, as well-meaning as and understanding as they might be and forward-thinking, there's certain things that they're never going to understand. Me as a white person, there are certain things I'm never going to understand. So I'm wondering, is there a certain creative energy, a certain generativity, just even a feeling of solidarity that emerges in that creative space from that shared experience and that shared struggle?
Absolutely, yes. I think a clear example is sometimes we'll start rehearsal and a dancer will say, I have to vent about this thing that happened to me today or yesterday.
Yep.
And that person will start 30 seconds into it, will go, yes, I know what you mean. Oh my God, I'm so sorry this happened to you. Versus sometimes I know I have to, if something happens to me of that fashion and I'm talking to someone who doesn't have that experience or doesn't really has never experienced it, I have to go in length talking about why is that problematic and why was that hurtful and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And so there is a way in which having shared experiences because of the bodies we inhabit and our presence in the world it brings a level of comfort, but also is an entry point when we deal with these issues that we many of us face within the company. Then when it comes to content, it's almost like there are we can avoid explaining ourselves so much which we do so much in our daily lives anyways. It's more like we're in family and we can just delve into the meat of it.
Yeah, and over explaining in terms of art making doesn't usually help.
And especially if you're embodying an experience.
Yeah.
If we're embodying an experience of being othered or something like that, and you've been othered your whole life, then that's it. It's in your body, you're accessing it, and that goes into appropriation as well, because we're not appropriating an experience that's not our own. We are using our own experience to tell a story, and in the case that we've worked with other communities that might have not been our experience, then they are the ones sharing those experiences with what their bodies have stored. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So these experiences are so kinetic. They're such in flesh and bones, and literally, if you look back at the history of colonization, and that rings through everything that we're still experiencing now, it was the labor. It's
exactly.
We need labor that we pay almost nothing for, so we're going to imprison Black people. And then I was learning more about watching Amend. It's a beautiful series on Netflix, just this history of with Latinx people, especially Mexicans, okay, when the economy is such that we need them to pick fruit, we're gonna let them come in. But as soon as we don't need them, okay, it's mass deportation. So it's and how that all rings through, it is such in the body. It's another reason why I think dance is so positioned to speak to these issues.
Yeah, and that reminds me of the position of African Americans, for example. So the moment when they needed to bring Africans and enslaved them to build this country, they were needed. They were definitely mistreated. I mean, they were enslaved and tortured and so many things. But then once they were done with building the country, then they're disposable, like their lives are. That's why we have Black Lives Matter, right? So definitely there is a way in which this country selects who matters and who deserves wealth and who deserves health and education, proper education. And I definitely think that within my company, we have all experienced so many of these issues. And some of us are Puerto Rican, so we talk a lot about our experience as people that have migrated from Puerto Rico, which is a colony of the United States, and what does that mean? What does it mean to have? I said this before, but just like to reiterate that through the Proyecto Melaza, which we created with artists in Puerto Rico, that is one thing that is a recurrent theme within our work, our social justice work, and something I foresee to be a recurrent theme in throughout the future amongst the other things that we do. Proyecto Melaza will continue because it's based on the problem of being colonized and how, like, the United States, there is a problem definitely with colonization, but now the United States is a colonizer as a country. It's colonizes other places, one of which is my country. So it's an interesting dynamic to be here in the United States, supporting all of these struggles while I'm also living in the place that oppresses my country. So it's a very it's why I think it's important for me to continue to do this work of Proyecto Melaza while I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah. A feeling in the body, and just like, what's your, like, is my body occupied?
Correct.
Like, who I
oh my God, what a great question. I have to write that down. Thank you. That's a great question.
And what does that do to my breath? Or if I'm like a young Black or brown man just walking down the street, like, and I'm afraid of a cop showing up around the corner, and like, what does that mean for my literal existence? Like, what does that do to my breath? What does that do to my, like, movement signature, like how I walk through the world? I think it just goes so deep, and I just think a lot about that, of like the literal physical experience of marginalization.
And how that's right. Like when we talk about how do we shrink ourselves in some spaces where we don't feel safe or secure for whatever reason, and it doesn't have to be only a person of color, like anybody. Like we have ways in which we close ourselves when we don't feel safe, in places where we feel open. And so, like, even those movements, like, I'll segue into the Dance for Social Justice work that we do, we really tap into that. We tap into the ways in which the stories that we have stored in our system reflect in the ways that we move and move through the world.
Going to ask next, that is a great segue. You are running a workshop, Dance for Social Justice, at Jacob's Pillow, through Jacob's Pillow. Love to hear more about it and that work generally, as you just brought up.
Yeah, so I'll start with saying that Dance for Social Justice, ironically, I started that with language. So I used to teach Spanish and back in New York, and I would always ask the students to think about an issue within their community and to devote the course, as they learn Spanish, to learn Spanish as a, ¿cómo se dice? Utilize their concern as a way to enter the learning of the language. And so it's something that was a long time ago. That was a long time ago that we started that. And it was also based on pedagogy of the oppressed, when we acknowledge that the answers are not out there. And so that is a premise to the way that I approach the work, that I don't give participants the answer. The questions and the answers are within themselves. And I, through the program, we guide them with like tools and prompts, and like obviously the guidance of like we are as a company, like some of us are trained, so we are the training of choreography, the training of educators, and also our social justice training. And so with Jacob's Pillow, what we're doing now is we have a residency through Pittsfield Moves, which is their community engagement branch. And we are working with people from the Berkshires. And the program is designed virtually due to COVID. I wish it was in person for many reasons, but it has been a beautiful experience virtually as well. And it has 4 tiers to it. So the first workshop was how our past informs our future. And we have Larry Spotted Crowman, who's Nipmuc, talk to us about colonization, life before colonization, and life now for Native people in the Berkshires, and also talking about white supremacy and how white supremacy spreads into different systems, how we see it show up in education, what is knowledge, and all of that was brought up, and the participants embodied that knowledge and reflected upon that. The second one was the facilitators for the content part, where Analisa Venegas and Dennis Powell from the NAACP and Manos Unidas, and they spoke about facing our present. Where are we today? And they focused on the pandemic. And this week, we have Shirley Edgerton, who will be bringing in some youth that she works with, and she's going to be talking about radical imagination. So we're going to all think that she's going to bring youth that will talk about how do they imagine themselves in the future, and then participants will be reflecting upon that. And then the last workshop will be all of us together, putting all of the information together, embodying all that knowledge, and then really looking at it as in a more like dance composition. How are we going to put all of these ideas together? How have we reflected upon it? And how do we make sense of all of this history? And how do you position yourself within all of this? So, and obviously everything is coming from an anti-racist, anti-patriarchal and decolonizing perspective. So it is by nature a space geared towards liberation.
That sounds amazing. We'll have to put links up. Are you doing that? I don't know if there's plans to do that again, further series.
Yeah, so
catch it this time.
Yeah, so this time around, participants that registered were asked to register for all 4. So there's continuity and trust building and all of that. But definitely we, as Danza Organica, as a company, the program is available. So anyone who's interested in hiring us for the program, please feel free to contact me. And also, once we're done with this residency with Jacob's Pillow, we'll be also putting out other programs that people can keep an eye out for.
Nice. Yes, everyone, watch the social channels, etc.
Yes.
Stay tuned.
Yes.
Wonderful. Spoke a little bit about COVID there, and it feels like the elephant in the room question. How are you making it work?
Yes.
So yeah, what's been the experience, just trying to keep the mission alive of the company through this time? How have you made it work? All that.
Yeah. I mean, it has no doubt been a difficult experience, especially when the work that we do is so rooted in contact, holding each other, catching. I think that dancers all over the world have been hit pretty hard with that, and like thinking about how do we even continue to create in the work that we do under these conditions. And so I would say March 13th was our last day in person last year, and the week after we started going virtual. And I must have tried so many formulas on what would work virtually for our rehearsals. So we went through a lot of, the dancers were so generous because I tried everything, this week we're going to try this, and I would feel it out, and the next week we would try something else. And I think something that really worked for us is that we started working with not started, continued working with our dancers from Puerto Rico, and
Mm,
going to premiere the work last year, but obviously that was not possible. A work that has been in the works for 3 years, and we decided to put out a series of movies, Proyecto Melasa movie series, and that helped guide a lot of the work that we were doing, that they were doing, and focused our energies on that virtual presentation. And also
nice.
gave us a way to think about, I guess, gave us intention and motivation as well.
Mm, mhm, mhm,
And through the summer, we would rehearse outdoors with our masks, like in parks and stuff. And then we
mhm,
came back, had our virtual presentation, and then everything closed down again. I remember in December and January, so we went back to virtual,
mm,
and then came back out in February. Came back to being in person with our masks. And I have to say, it also has, as a company, we went deeper into the mission and vision and our commitment and why are we here and what do we want to do. Because sometimes, like in previous years, we were always like booked and working towards a show and working towards a workshop and so goal oriented that we barely had time to look at infrastructure and our mission, vision, and goals.
mm,
So this year really has given us a chance to look at it closely, look at who we are, what do we have, what do we want to change, what do we want to rejuvenate. You know, all of these things have been topics of conversation in our rehearsals, and I really appreciate having had the time to do that actually, because now we're putting all those things to fruition. So
yes, I think that's a common experience of like
yeah,
for once having that time to
exactly.
step back and take that wider view. Sure.
Yeah, yeah. It's been hard nonetheless. Definitely it's been hard.
Yeah.
But like I think I am very thankful to my dancers that everyone, you know, pushed through, and we're gonna
Mm,
make it and we'll figure it out, you know. So
yeah, yeah. I know for me, just I've actually had the experience to take class more often and
right,
just
nice, nice.
yeah, and
That's
just being
awesome.
able to dance, even though my bureau's right there and I might kick it every so often, to have that to like in this time, like it just like saves my soul, and I'm so grateful, even
Yeah.
though I so miss being in space with people moving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's true. It has opened up so many other possibilities as well. So like for instance, for We Create this year, we're having someone from North Africa join us
Nice.
from Tunisia, and
Yeah.
we're super excited, and that's something that probably wouldn't have, well, definitely wouldn't have happened if it wasn't a virtual festival this year,
Mm,
because for many reasons, and the travel expenses and all of that. So there
yeah.
have definitely been some things that are make us think outside of the box, forced us to think outside of the box, and also like reimagine ways in which we can create work, showcase work, or be with one another.
Mm. And talk about like opening up imagination, working with people from different countries, you
Exactly,
know,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah, other
absolutely. Yeah.
continents, like because we
Mm-hmm.
get into this very kind of, Americanized or like North American kind of way of thinking, like it's, that's why they
Mm-hmm.
say like
Mm-hmm.
travel as much as you can.
Yeah, yeah. And now virtual travel.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. So, apart from that, are there any other wins for you personally or for the company that you want to share? What's given you light through all of this, apart from what you just
Um, what's given me life to move through COVID? Is that the
Yeah,
question?
yeah.
um, I think, I mean, it's been really hard. So I'm not gonna hide the fact that it's been really hard. And I think that what's given me light within the company is the fact that I'm someone who doesn't give up on something that she believes in. And I take that from my mother, who's like really determined, and I really love Danza Organica so much, and it's my baby. We've had it for so long, and I believe in the mission, and I think honestly something that kept me going is like the ways in which I was constantly finding options, or how are we going to do this time, or how can I engage my dancers this time around, or what creative ways can we use to show our work that are not forced and that are not desperate, but are like natural ways in which this is how we're going to show our work. So for example, we made a movie on dancing through COVID, and they didn't know themselves this was going to happen. This was something I was working on my back burner, but we had recorded all of our Zoom version of work. And also they had submitted some rehearsal stuff throughout the year. And so I put together a movie on our process on dancing through COVID in 2020. And I think all of those things, like making the constant trying to make sense out of something that is so, I mean, we're still in it, right? So that it's so, it's unprecedented, and it's also so hard to explain and to digest. And we cannot come to a conclusion yet because it's not over yet. So it's kind of like, for me, it's like what's given me light is recognizing the freshness of life constantly, and how important it is to be flexible in your mind and to acclimate and investigate and reimagine and try it out, and which are tools that as artists we have, right? As artists, we're always trying to figure that out, but like doing that in a daily way, in a daily, and with everything in your life. And with my son as well, I have a 7-year-old, so that has been a challenge, and also an incredible blessing to have him here every day, and to find ways to entertain him. So like there's never been a dull moment. You know, it's been, I think I have not had time to sit back and not figure something out. Like every day there's something I have to figure out. So it's just been like that. It's been back to back, but in a positive way. I think that it has, for me and for the company and for many of us, I think that it has shown our resilience and our creativity, you know?
Yeah. Artists are a lot of things, and resilient and adaptive
Yes.
and creative.
Exactly.
It's
exactly.
definitely
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. And hats off to parents of young ones at this time. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it's a whole other thing, and something we didn't expect, because nobody was prepared for it. It was all of a sudden, this is what's going to happen, you know? Everything happened so suddenly. So
it was sink or swim for everyone and everything. Sink or swim.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, is there anything else you want to share that I know what I wanted to ask. Are those films, is that still available for folks to check out? And we can put that link up.
Yeah, so those films are still available for folks to check out through our website, through danzaorganica.org, under Melasa.
Nice.
You can watch the films. Yeah.
Awesome. Definitely check that out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, to wrap up, is there anything else you wanted to share that we didn't hit on? You want people to know?
Well, first, I want to share say to all creatives that that we are in this together, and that I understand the struggle is real, and that we're gonna get through this. And I also wanted to share that in the summer, my company is going to be in residency in the yard, working on a project that we've been working for a few years now with members of the Quinawampanoag tribe. And we're not sure exactly, due to COVID, We're not sure how things are going to pan out throughout the residency, but I just want to put the word out there to keep an eye out for that. There might be a public presentation. There may be a video presentation. We're not sure, but just putting the word out that that's happening. And that We Create, sooner than that, May 14 and 15 is going to be We Create virtually through Hibernian Hall, our community partner. So that's
Nice.
definitely very soon. So mark your calendars.
We will. Thumbs up.
And thank you so
All
much
right.
for this space. This has been fun. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thanks to you for your time and your wonderful insights.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for tuning in. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Share it with someone who you think it might also move. And we will see you next time. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful day.